thanks so much for coming to celebrate Dad's life. There's a lot there to celebrate. He was a great guy. What I'd like to share is a couple things my dad loved. Dad loved the West. I think that's clear, and that would kind of explain why I'm dressed the way I am today. He was a guy who wore his cowboy boots a lot. Well into his late 80s. When we hit the 90s, they started getting kind of hard to get on and off, but he liked his cowboy boots. He usually wore a big Western belt. I will speak from experience with that because I traveled with him to some out-of-town weddings, and it was a lot of fun getting him through security with that belt buckle and the cowboy boots. You ever try and get cowboy boots on and off going through security? That was lots of fun. Suggested he wear tennies, but why would you do that? He was wearing cowboy boots, so he wore his Western shirt. His favorite suit was a Western suit. I think you've probably seen it on him. It was very handsome on him. He looked really nice, and I think wore it to several grandchildren's weddings along with his bolo tie and all that, because that's who he was. He was a pretty cool dude. He, as far back as I can remember, which is to about the age of 3½, we always had Arizona Highways magazines in our house. Always. They were present, and I think he was still getting them at the Holland home. He loved Arizona Highways. He loved Louis L'Amour books. I think he had every single one of them and truly enjoyed those. He loved spending the winters in Arizona and Mexico with Mom. That was fun. I can remember sitting with him on the porch of their Arizona place saying, "This is a life. This is just the life." He really, really enjoyed that. He enjoyed spending time at our place in Colorado. Lee's family has a wonderful place in the mountains in Colorado, and he loved being there. What they would do is go from the Boulder up to the cabin up at Deer Valley and enjoy time there. And again, this is the life. But I think the last time, Mom can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but about the last Boulder race he ran, he also took his last long day-long ride at Deer Valley. I think he was in his 80s when he took his last one there, and that's horseback ride. I didn't. The day-long ride is a horseback ride. It's like a ridge ride. You're in the saddle all day. Generally, guests at the ranch kind of quit doing that around 45 or 50 because it takes a lot out of you. But now my dad, he was out there on a horse till he was 80 or 81. That was really something. He loved running the Boulder. That was just a highlight of his whole spring. And Mom was game. She ran it right along with him. And that was really, really special. I think Marty touched on too very well. My dad loved cars, especially Fords. He was a Ford man. The car that's parked outside the Holland home is a Ford Taurus. So those Fords meant a lot to him. That Model A, the Red Bug, was a real treasure, and there are pictures of him with the Red Bug at the Holland home. Is a Harley picture there too? Yeah, Harley, and love that motorcycle, right, Mike? Right. That's right. That's right. He anytime any of us got a new car, we'd take it home to show Dad. He'd always pop the hood, and look under and point out what was this and what was that under the hood. I'm going, but he knew what it was all about. And then he'd say, "Let's take it for a spin." And off we'd go, and he'd be behind the wheel with a great big smile on his face. And in fact, I don't know how many years ago, John, was the party where he took Justin's Porsche for a spin. Oh. One of John's buddies came to a party at Mom and Dad's house. Justin's here. And he came in a Porsche, and Dad just thought that was cool, so they said, "Well, take it out for a ride, Dad." And he had it opened up to about 90 miles an hour along the shore. I was just enjoying it. And he was up there in years when he did that too, but he just came back with a huge smile on his face. He really enjoyed that ride. He made sure all of us, myself included, learned how to drive stick-shift cars, and it has been a practical piece of information and ability that we've all had, and we kind of took a page from that book and made sure our kids could drive sticks too. Let's see. He, the first, I can remember riding in the car with Mom, having a little minor fender bender. And one time I was driving the car and had a fender bender. And when Mom came home after that one and I came home and showed him, he laughed. He didn't get upset. He just said, "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "Did anybody get hurt?" "No." "It's just a car." He was great about that. He was great. Another thing he loved was his family, and that he made that clear. Dad was not a real verbally expressive person saying, "Oh, I love you, you're wonderful," and all that. But somehow we all got the message that we were loved, and we had his approval. And he never voiced a lot of disapproval. He was not a critical man. You kind of sensed when he wasn't crazy about something you said or done, but he never came down hard on us. And it was such a joy to please him that none of us ever really felt like we had to go overboard and go out of line to get his attention, because his love and approval were so easy to gain, and it was such a pleasant experience having his love and approval. He kind of had a way of letting us know that he thought we could do anything. Anything we set our minds to and were willing to work hard for, he knew we could do. And the confidence he had in us as individuals gave us confidence in ourselves to go ahead and try something that was a little bit out of the box. You know, the Christian schools didn't have pools. They didn't have pools at the Christian highs, at least not in Illinois. But I loved swimming, and for a while I thought, you know, maybe I want to be a PE teacher and you know, teach swimming. And he said, well, you know, you might not be able to teach at a Christian school, but you know, go for it if you like it. I ended up being a nurse, but that's another story. But he encouraged me to interview for a job at a local pool that was opening in our town. And I got the job, and I ended up being a lifeguard. And that was with my dad's encouragement. He's the one who drove me to the interview. He just delighted in his grand and great-grandkids. They just were the joy of his life. He, just this past Thanksgiving, spent the day at our home. And I have a sweet mental picture of him sitting on the couch in the den with our 4-year-old granddaughter, his little great-granddaughter, snuggled up to him and talking and just having a nice time together. Dad was great with little kids and babies. If he was over and we're in the middle of a holiday and everybody's running around cooking food and everything, and he had a swallowing baby, you just handed it to Dad. And he very happily held that baby, and in no time they were quiet and smiling. He was just gentle that way. There's a picture on Mom and Dad's refrigerator in the Holland home of him holding our youngest grandson, who's now 2, but he was just a little baby then. He was 3 months old at Christmas, his baby's first Christmas. And Dad's completely absorbed in looking into his face and talking to him very softly. It's just the sweetest picture, and Gaby's just looking up at him because he was great with babies. And you don't see a lot of, you don't equate that with the tough West Side guy, but that's who he was. He was very, very, that gentle spirit really came through with babies and little kids. Both of my kids have talked about how he listened. He'd ask you questions, and he'd listen to you, and he'd want to know what you were thinking and what you had to say. He didn't often offer his opinion or his slant on something unless you asked him. He, when I was about 18, he sat me down and said, you know, I think you're really old enough and mature enough to make good decisions. So from now on, if you want my advice, ask for it, and I'll give it to you. But otherwise, I won't give you my advice or my opinion, because I think you've got a good head on your shoulders and you can figure things out for yourself. And I was thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. And he said, but if you're making an important decision and you don't ask my opinion and it all goes south and falls apart, it's going to be your job to deal with it. I'm not going to come after you and pick up the pieces. You can make your own decisions, but you're responsible for what happens when you make those decisions. And that's kind of the way Dad and Mom raised us. We were to be responsible citizens. And if you made a bad decision, you better be prepared to clean up your own mess. He really encouraged us to be independent, to think out of the box, to have the courage to step out and follow the road less traveled. It was okay. We didn't have to fit into a tight little parameter of who he thought we should be, as long as we were following our own path He just stood by and cheered and encouraged. And as far as education, he respected education very much. It was kind of sad that he didn't have the chance to get much education, because formal education, he got a wonderful education in life. He didn't have the opportunity, but he really encouraged all of us to seek as much education as we wanted and to follow whatever educational path we chose. It was our job to get the grades to get into the school that we chose. And from there, he did everything he could to make sure we were able to attend that school, paid the tuition. Dad loved fairness. He really treated everybody with consideration and respect. It didn't matter who they were, what they looked like, what they earned, where they lived, what they were. It didn't matter. He treated everybody with great fairness and consideration and respect. He was equally proud of all of us and of all the grandkids. It didn't matter who had what title or who did what. He just loved you because you were you. He just was always happy to see you and was so kind. He loved standing up for the underdog, as Marty mentioned, and that would be witness to that as he was a lifelong Cubs fan, as is Mike. In fact, Mike had a really good observation the morning Dad died, and Mom and I went over to talk to Mike to tell him what had happened, and Mike listened for a couple minutes and thought about it, and he said, Ron Santo and Father, two big Cubs fans in heaven. He was right. He was right. My dad loved crossword puzzles, and I understand that didn't just originate with him, because Aunt Pauline is a real good crossword puzzle fan too, and he passed that love along to my brothers and me. I can remember him sitting in his lazy boy doing the Sunday Trib crossword puzzle, and we all love to do crossword puzzles now. It's kind of interesting how that trickled down. My dad loved God. Again, he didn't preach, he lived it. You could see his love for God in the way he loved other people and loved us so kindly. And his calm confidence that God is in control taught us all such an important lesson. Marty was absolutely right. When we were stressing or worried or whatever about something, he'd say, I'm going to bed, because it's not going to do you any good to stay up and worry about it all night. God's going to be up all night. He's got it. Whatever he decides, it's okay. It'll be all right. And so I think I learned to love and trust God, my Father in heaven, because I was able to love and trust my Father right here. He showed me what trust and love are all about. So we love you, Dad.